everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Charlene and this is my little YouTube channel where I talk mainly about books but also with a little bit of lifestyle and travel as well. And today I'm going to be talking to you about my June 2025 reading wrap up. Hi everyone, I hope you're well and that you've had a good week. I am absolutely mind blown that I'm here doing my June 2025 reading wrap up because that means that half the year is gone already, and like I know everyone says it, but it's like, where's that gone? That like it seems to have just gone so fast. So I can't believe that 6 months of the year is gone and that we've only got 6 months left, but that means that I'm close to my holiday and I'm closer to Christmas, and so those are only good things for me. But yeah, just crazy, isn't it, how fast time goes? Anyway, I'm here to talk to you today about my June 2025 reading wrap up, and what I'll be talking to you about is books that I've read in June and also books that I picked up in June and anything else bookish related. So the first thing that I'll go through today is the first book that I read in June 2025, and I have done a separate video all about this which has a full review, spoiler-free review, and it just goes into a lot more detail about the plot and the characters and the themes of the book and all of that. But the first book that I read in June 2025 was If We Were Villains by M.L Rio, and if you haven't watched that video that I was just talking about, go and have a little watch of it if you're interested in this book or if you're interested in dark academia. But yeah, basically overall I was so surprised by this book because The Secret History by Donna Tartt is one of my favourite books of all time. That's a solid 5 out of 5 for me. It might even be a 6-star book. So lots of people compared this to it and said if you're a fan of The Secret History, you'll probably be a fan of If We Were Villains. So that's why it went on my list initially. And it took me absolutely ages to get to. And then when I actually did, oh my goodness. First of all, I can see very clearly why there's so many comparisons between this book and The Secret History. And like not only with just the dark academia vibe as a whole, but also with elements of the story and the characters themselves. Really the main bit of difference is that The Secret History, the students in that book are focusing on Greek language and Greek philosophy and things like that, whereas in this book they're drama students and they're Shakespearean drama students. So really those were the main bits of difference between the two books, and obviously the stories are different, but this one very much reminded me of it, which for me wasn't a problem at all. I absolutely loved reading If We Were Villains, and spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the video where I talk about this in more depth, I did end up scoring it a 5 out of 5 stars. I read this book when we went away. We went to a treehouse lodge for a couple of nights, and I did film a video about that as well, which I'll link in the description of this video. But we used it as a time to just relax and unwind and get some reading done, and it was just the perfect place to read because there was literally like a swinging bed underneath a treehouse and an egg chair and a hot tub and things like that. So I got a lot of reading of this done when we were there, and it was just the most perfect setting to do it in. This book was so good that it got me out of a reading slump that I didn't even know that I was in. When I started reading this book, I was like, you know, when it's just like a real page turner and you can't wait to see what's next. And that's what this book, it just had me reading through it so quickly. And then I realised as I was reading it that like I haven't felt and experienced that for a while, and unbeknownst to me I'd been in a bit of a reading slump, which this book got me right out of. And I'm not going to talk too much about the detail or the plot or the characters or anything like that because, you know, I've done a whole other video on that, and if you want to watch that I'll post a link to that in the description. But yeah, I don't need to tell you all of that again. I just want to say that if you are a fan of dark academia, if you like The Secret History, if you like something suspenseful and dramatic and twisty and intelligent, then do pop this book on your list if you haven't read it already. I thoroughly enjoyed If We Were Villains, and I'm already thinking about when I can read it next. I think this is going to become a comfort book, and I know that sounds weird to say because it's not very comforting, but to me for some reason books like this are, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a red flag, but this is a kind of comfort book to me, so I know I'm going to end up reading this one again. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and if you haven't read it already, I would highly recommend. Like I said, I scored this a 5 stars. So as much as I did really enjoy reading If We Were Villains, it did take me quite a bit of time to read because, if you don't know, I'm a slow reader and this is a 426 page book. So it did take me a little bit of time to read, even with that additional time of reading at the treehouse. So after this, I wanted to move on to something completely different and also a bit of a shorter read. So my next read in June 2025, and I think some of you will think this is a really, really random choice, but I moved on to this book here, which is called A Night to Remember, the classic best-selling account of the sinking of the Titanic by Walter Lord. And I know a lot of people will be like, what? Why are you reading books about the Titanic? But listen, this is one of those things that I just find really interesting. And I think it's because when I was younger was when the Titanic film came out and I ended up watching it all the time. It was just like background noise to me at one point. I would just put it on when I was doing my homework or when I got home from school or whatever it was. I had Titanic on in the background all the time. I was just completely obsessed with it for a period of time. And since then, I think I've had this interest of the Titanic that's never left my brain. And it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's like, obviously we all know what happened and why it happened, but the fact that it actually did happen and what happened to all those people that were supposed to survive on an unsinkable ship, it's just one of those things that I can't get out of my brain. So my husband saw this and picked it up for me, and I've thoroughly enjoyed reading this. The first thing I want to talk about this book is that the flop is amazing. Look at that. Shouldn't matter, but really does. Like, I had such a great time reading this book because of how floppy it is. I don't think I'm going to record a video going through this book in the way that I normally do the others, because I normally do a spoiler-free book review, and I feel like it's really hard to review a non-fiction book like this because it isn't something that I can be like, oh, the characters are all right or the plot was all right or anything like that. It's just a telling of a disaster, and I would feel really weird about reviewing that. And also, like, what can I say in a review video that you don't already know about the Titanic? Like, if you're interested in it or not, everybody knows what happened with the Titanic. So I won't film a completely separate video about this. I will just say that it has been really, really interesting to read. Obviously, we're all very familiar with the story of the Titanic and what happened there. But this is just written in a really interesting way. It is a collection of first-hand accounts by the survivors of the Titanic, but it is written not in like an interview form, but in the form of like a point A to point B. This is what happened and this was who was involved in that whole time. So the book starts with the Titanic hitting the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. at night, and it's just time by time, person by person, what happened from 11:40 p.m. until I think it was 2:20 a.m. when the ship finally went down. And it's from that time to that time, all of the movements, in time, like going along from point A to point B, what happened, who was doing what, who said what, who remembers what happening. And that part of it is so interesting. And it also made me realise how accurate the film actually is. And I think they used this book as part of the reference material for that film. Obviously they would have had to have done a lot of research into the accounts and the people and what actually happened at that night. But it really did strike me how accurate the film really is. So the book is super, super interesting. It goes into such great detail about what happened, and it is heart-wrenching to read. And also, like, one of the things I didn't realise, and you kind of get a glimpse of in the film, is just how much of a non-emergency it actually was at the time, because they were so bought into this marketing of it being the unsinkable ship, and also they didn't want to worry any of their passengers and had such faith that the Titanic was unsinkable that really there wasn't a moment after the ship hit the iceberg that they were like, okay, this is an emergency, everyone, this is what we need you to do. It was all just very much word of mouth and like, oh, why is everyone starting to rush about, and why is the captain doing this? And then people cottoned on to what was happening, and then obviously they could see for themselves what was happening on the ship. So yeah, it's just really weird to think about that, how we see it now as such a great massive disaster in history, but at the time they didn't even realize what was happening to them. One thing that I loved about the book was that with the Titanic, obviously it ends it ends with the ship going down and with Jack and Rose and what happened with their relationship, and then it kind of throws you back into the future, and that is really interesting. But this, what I loved is that it picks up like the whole way through. It tells you what happened from the minute that the ship hit the iceberg to when the ship sinks, and then beyond that. So that's where the film kind of ends, but the book carries on after that. So it tells you what happens after everybody was evacuated, about like the little boats that people went into to get away from the ship. It tells you about the people that couldn't get into the boats because, as we all know, there were not enough boats for the number of people on the Titanic. And just what was happening around as well. Like there were so many other cruise ships and different types of ships within a certain mile radius that were getting these alerts and maydays and all these things about what was happening with the Titanic, and them all trying to rush to get there, and one that was so close but missed it, and by the time they got there they were like, where is the Titanic? And by then it was underwater. And it's just so heartbreaking to know that they were so close. But I found that super interesting to find out what actually happened after the ship went down and what happened to the people in those boats. It gives you an account of conversations that were had, the ways people survived, how they pulled together as a team, how people had arguments, how people pushed each other overboard because they were annoying each other, like all these types of things. And it also gives a very interesting glimpse into, after the Titanic, there was never such a divide between the classes as there were on this ship, because there was first class, second class, third class, and then staff. And that's why so many people died, is because really they only accounted for the first class, the women and children, and then not even all the women and children if they weren't in those higher classes. So I think it says in the book that since then there has never been such a divide in classes as there were here before, because those people in the lower classes were literally like locked down and prevented from getting out the ship and stuff like that. So it's just very interesting to think about what life was actually like at the time and how different things are since then. We had been thinking about like maybe trying a cruise at one point in life, and reading this makes me go, maybe not yet. Maybe I'll leave it for now. But anyway, that's enough babbling about this book. If you are interested in any part of the Titanic and you want to know detail for detail what happened, the real life accounts of the people that were on the ship and that survived and that didn't, and what actually happened, then I would highly recommend this. This was a really interesting read. Like I said, I think it's a bit of an awkward one to give a rating, so I won't do that, but I will just say that I really enjoyed reading it. And if you're interested, I'd recommend that you read it too. So those are the only two books that I read this month. Like I said, If We Were Villains took me quite a while to get through because I am a slow reader. And also when I'm reading a book, especially like the Titanic book that I was just talking about, it's got so much detail. It's like, this person did this person did this person was related to this person and did this at this time, and all of this information that I really try and take in every detail. I can't skim read things like that. So although it's a thin book, it takes me ages to get through. And with If We Were Villains, it's quite a thick book, but I don't want to skim read. I want to take in every part of the story so that I fully understand what's going on. So it took me quite a while to get through both of those books. So I read 2 books in June 2025, but I'm personally very happy with that. And then now I'll get on to the books that I picked up this month, which both of them are Stephen King books this month. We've got a Stephen King month, which is never a bad thing. But the first book that I picked up this month was one of the Dark Tower books. So this is Song of Susanna, The Dark Tower, written obviously by Stephen King. This book, I haven't read any of the Dark Tower books yet, but me and my husband are both very keen Stephen King readers. We both really love Stephen King, and actually I haven't even read that many Stephen King books, to be honest. I just started this year, but 3 Stephen King books are in my top 5 books, so we really enjoy reading his books. And we have a whole shelf dedicated to Stephen King, and that we want to keep growing and hopefully maybe one day end up owning all of his books. So this one I picked up because close to me, I've got a local book swap shed, and you may have seen that I've gone there before. If not, I will again put the link to that in the description. But I went to the book swap shed because I had a couple of books that I wanted to take back that I'd got from there before. And while I was there, it's kind of hit and miss what's there, because obviously it's a book swap. You never know what somebody's going to put in and what somebody's going to take. So I was just having a little mooch around. There wasn't too much on this particular day that took my fancy, but then I saw this Stephen King book. Also, it's in really, really good condition. Like, there's no scuffs or marks on it whatsoever. It feels pretty much brand new. Like, there's not even any corners that have been turned or anything like that. So yeah, it could be a brand new book. So I thought to myself, I haven't read any of the Dark Tower books, but I will take that home and pop it on our Stephen King shelf, because I'm sure that at some point one of us will get to it. So I wanted to put this one on my shelf. Like I said, we haven't read any of the Dark Tower books, so I'm not sure where in the line of the series this sits. But I will quickly read you the blurb. So it says, join the quest for the elusive Dark Tower Song of Susanna. Roland Deschain, I might be pronouncing that wrong, gunslinger hero continues his perilous adventures in search of the key to the quest that will define his life. Roland's loyal followers, Jake, Father Callahan and Oi, set out to break Susanna's date with Destiny in New York. Meanwhile, Roland and Eddie brave the state of Maine in the summer of 1977. It is a frightful world where bullets are flying, a world inhabited by the author of a novel called Salem's Lot. Driven by revelation and suspense, this pivotal installment in this magnificent epic will leave readers gasping to read the electrifying conclusion, The Dark Tower, and the Tower is Closer. Set in a world of extraordinary circumstances, filled with stunning visual imagery and unforgettable characters, the Dark Tower series is Stephen King's most visionary piece of storytelling that may well be his crowning achievement. So okay, that blurb tells us that this is somewhere in the middle of that series of books. Like I said, never read any of the Dark Tower books before, but that was so interesting to me, that blurb, and that made me want to get round to it. And what I understand as well is, like, I don't know how, but I think either all of or a lot of Stephen King's books are linked, like they're in the same universe, kind of like a Marvel vibe, how somewhere or another everything is linked together. And obviously it mentioned there in the blurb Salem's Lot as well, so I'm yet to read Salem's Lot. But I really want to understand how everything fits together. And if I'd known right from the beginning before reading any Stephen King, I would have liked to have known if there's an order that you should read things in. Same with the Marvel films, like to be able to understand the plot and how everything's linked, there's like a certain order that you should follow and watch the films in. So I'd be really interested to know how everything's linked together. Are you meant to read things in a certain order? Have any of you read any of the Dark Tower books, and do you understand how everything Stephen King links together? Is it all of his work, or is it just some of a few books? I'm not sure. But I know that some of the characters appear in lots of the same books, so lots of different books, sorry. So I'm really not sure. But anyway, when I saw this, I had to pick it up and get it on our Stephen King shelf. And sooner or later, I can't wait to read this. I don't think it'll be for a while yet, but when I get there, I'm very much looking forward to it. And the second book I picked up this month is another Stephen King book, and it's his brand new book, which is very exciting, called Never Flinch. After the Titanic, I literally just finished that last night, so this is going to be my next read, and I'm so excited. Firstly, the cover really, really interests me, and I love a good hardback book as well, so I'm very, very excited by that. Let me read you the blurb as well. From master storyteller Stephen King comes a thrilling new novel with intertwining storylines, one about a killer on a diabolical revenge mission, and another about a vigilante targeting a feminist celebrity speaker, featuring the beloved Holly Gibney and a dynamic new cast of characters. So I think that's everything it gives us. Oh no, there is a blurb in the inside, but it's really, really long, so I'll spare you that. But like I said when I was just talking about Dark Tower, There are some characters that appear in a lot of his books, and Holly Gibney is one. One of my first Stephen King books I read was Holly, and I hadn't realised when I picked it up that Holly was a character that had been in lots of his other books. So I took a lot of the story for what it was, but I also didn't understand a lot of Holly's backstory, which was my own fault. Like, I should have realised that or read up on it a little bit more. So obviously Holly is in this book as well. But aside from that, the story itself sounds very, very interesting. So this will be my next read. I've also downloaded this on Audible because I find that with Stephen King books, they are quite lengthy. How many pages has this one got? 410. So they are quite lengthy, and as a slow reader, sometimes I get lost in the detail and I feel like I'm taking far too long to read it. So it's great for me to be able to go between reading to listening to the audiobook on Audible as well, so that I can, like, you know, I'll read it at night when I'm reading and I'm at lunchtime and stuff like that as well, but then I can also pop it on while I'm working or when I'm driving somewhere and things like that. I just love doing that. It gets me much more absorbed into the story. So I'm really excited to read this. I think this is pretty much just come out. So if any of you have read this and you have any thoughts or opinions on it, please do let me know. I'd be so interested to find out. So those are all the books that I've read and picked up in June 2025. But I also did want to say as well that I just wanted to touch on something slightly different. Because we're, like, as well as big readers, me and my husband love like getting into a good TV series, and we love films as well. So we just love stories so much in various different forms. And one thing that we have just finished is we have just finished watching 1923, which is a spin-off program of Yellowstone. We haven't actually, he's watched some of the episodes of Yellowstone before, but I haven't, because I was a bit like, I don't know if it's for me. It seems like a bit of like a lads thing. But anyway, my dad told us to watch 1923 and he was like, honestly, it's really, really good. So we watched it and we were absolutely blown away. Like, I don't know who out there has watched 1923, but it was such a good program. So obviously it's set in 1923 and it is a spin-off of the Yellowstone program. So it's like a prequel, and it was just so interesting. It's about like cowboys and it's about the land that they live on, and it's right at the time of the Prohibition and when life is just starting to become more modern. So they very much live like in the rural areas without like electric and running water and things like that, and they live off the land. But then in the towns and in the cities, they have just introduced things like electricity and washing machines, and there's a car, and people are like, what is going on here? Like, this is this newfangled stuff. It will never catch on. We'll never live with these washing machines and electric and this and that. So it's just like about that time in history where like everything's starting to go from being very like old school and rural into everything becoming slightly more modern. What I loved about the program is that there's like 3 or 4 separate storylines that run alongside each other and then tie up at the end. Like, everything links back together, but these 4 storylines are all happening seemingly all in completely different places, seemingly unrelated, but they're each as interesting as each other, which is really great, because usually when you have like a TV show or a book or whatever where there's lots of different storylines, there's usually just like 1 or 2 that you care about, and the rest of them are just like, I can't wait to get back to the other storyline. But this wasn't like it at all. All of the storylines were as interesting as each other. Like I said, they all link back together. We loved the characters and loved that kind of like cowboy vibe. It was so cool. And Helen Mirren is in it, and obviously she's an amazing actress, but she is an absolute legend in this program. She is a queen and we love her in this house. So if you haven't watched 1923, I'd highly recommend. There's some really cool characters, some absolute badass characters, an amazing plot, loads and loads of interesting different storylines, loads of very shocking storylines as well that kind of wake you up about what life was actually like at that time and what people went through. Just everything about it was so interesting. I think there's only 2 seasons of it. We got through it pretty quickly and it was just, we enjoyed it so much. So I think There's also Yellowstone, and there's another one as well. There's like a prequel, like it's called 18 something. I don't, someone's screaming at the TV. I don't know what it's called, like 1883 or whatever it is, but it's like a prequel to 1923. So I think at some point we're going to get round to that, and eventually we'll get on to Yellowstone as well. But we'll leave that for last because obviously it's the last one in the line, and there's the one with the most seasons as well. But if you haven't watched 1923, I'd highly recommend it. And if you have, please let me know, spoiler free, what you thought in the comments. What was your favourite storyline? Who are your favourite characters? I would just say we loved Cara, who is Helen Mirren's character, and we loved Spencer. What a cool badass. But yeah, let me know. So I think that's everything that wraps up my June 2025 reading wrap up for this month. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found some of it interesting. If you have any recommendations for me, whether that's books, TV shows, films, whatever it is, please do let me know. I'd be so fascinated to see what you recommend. If you would like any recommendations from me, or if there's anything in particular you want to see from me on this channel, please do let me know. I'd love this to be a conversation and love to get you guys involved and tell me what you want to see, and I can hopefully make that happen, so that would be great as well. Thank you so much for watching this video and for sticking around and watching my videos and being by my side. It means the world. If you haven't already, please like this video, and I would love you forever and ever if you'd subscribe to my little channel, because I've just made over 1,000 subscribers and I'm so happy and grateful, and I'd love to keep growing. And just thank you so much for being here and for watching this video, and I will see you very soon in my next one. Thank you, bye.